Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and it is Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I can tell you I'm feeling pretty good. As you've been able to probably tell, I've been fighting the coughs and the allergies probably since the beginning of February, and I do take Claritin once in a while. But I really hate doing that because for me, truthfully, I'm going to be honest, when I take Claritin, it makes me want to eat. I don't know what it is. It just does. I've looked up the side effects. That's not primarily a side effect of Claritin for most people, but it does seem to be that way for me. So I've been trying to stay away from it, and because of that, just have to fight through the sniffling and the cough. But my voice feels real good. I'm not feeling as tired as I have, and that is all good news. Like I said, I've told you before, this time of the year in Florida for me, the last how many years I've been here, 4 or 5 years, is a nightmare. And it was that way when I lived in Las Vegas as well. However, it got worse, and then it kind of got better over time. I'm hoping that happens here too. We got St. Patrick's Day coming up this week. I guess that would be Thursday. And I am Irish, but I take no part in any of that stuff. I think that if you were to look at me, maybe you'd be able to tell that I come from Ireland. Maybe I look German. Of course, I have a German last name, but that's a long story. My parents are German and Italian, but I'm Irish. Don't get me started. St. Patrick's Day, I don't think that I've ever celebrated that day in my 45 years on this earth. I just haven't. I don't drink. I don't like big crowds. I'm not really into parties. So there's that. Never been to a parade. I don't even know. Maybe going back to high school, I might have worn green on St. Patrick's Day. That's about as crazy as I've ever gotten on March 17th. But it's coming up this week. Me, as I've told you, I just think of myself as an American. In fact, it's weird to me as an American when I see people who happen to have Italian last names and their family has been here for generations, taking part in Italian Day or Middle Eastern Day. It just seems weird to me. I'm just got to tell you. I'm just an American, so I take pride in July 4th and anything that has to do with my country, the United States. I guess that's a good place to end the introduction of the show. A lot went on this weekend. Got a lot to talk about. I doubt that I'll get to all of it today. Did you see that Ben Shapiro and Michelle Fields have quit from Breitbart.com? I've told you that I've stopped going to Breitbart.com as a source for information for this show. And that's been going on probably at least a month now. It just got to the point where I couldn't go to that site in good conscience, seeing what they were writing there, and seeing how they were propping up Donald Trump, a guy who their very own creator, Andrew Breitbart, disliked and didn't trust. And if I know it, because the videos are out there of Andrew Breitbart talking about Donald Trump going back to 2007, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. If I know about it, then everybody that works at Breitbart knows about it. And to me, they've been undercutting Andrew Breitbart's legacy by how they've treated Donald Trump since last summer, frankly. And it finally came to a head. Of course, we know from last week the allegation that the campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, pulled Michelle Fields, a reporter for Breitbart, to the ground. Hasn't been much in the way of the apology from the Trump campaign. In fact, they deny that it ever happened, despite there being video evidence, not actually, but the video of you could see his arm reaching out for her. You don't see her fall to the ground, but then a second later, she's nowhere to be seen. There's enough evidence of that. And then on top of that, the powers that be at Breitbart.com came out saying they weren't allowed to defend their fellow employee, Michelle Fields. And that's eventually what caused Ben Shapiro, and once again, Michelle Fields, to resign. And I don't think it's over. Looking at what I've seen, people have publicized, BuzzFeed and others have publicized the internal conversations that have been going on over there. I don't think that's going to be the end of it. I think it's gotten a little too much finally. Now, like I said, for me, it's, now granted, I don't work there, but for me, some of these people should have quit months ago. If they wanted to truly recognize Andrew Breitbart's legacy and what he stood for, they should have quit months ago. I know it's not easy to get work. I don't know how well they're getting paid there, but they're getting paid. And I'm sure it's probably going to be difficult for maybe some of them to find other work. But there didn't seem to be a lot of controversy over there as to how they were covering Donald Trump, basically just believing everything that he said. In fact, the last time I was there, the only person who seemed to have a rational mind over there was Ben Shapiro, and I don't even think that much of him. Now, of course, I think a little bit more of him, being that he quit. And in his statement, he said why. And his words, if you happen to read it, express what I've believed about Breitbart.com going on at least a few months now. That they seem to be in the tank for Trump. And it does seem that anybody who comes in contact with Donald Trump, it's like they become corrupted by him. And that's the reason that the biggest reason that I am suspicious about a Donald Trump presidency. That's why. And to the point where, and I've told you my suspicion, I don't have evidence of this. I have evidence of it in my own personal dealings, my personal business, for example, this show, my Twitter feed, and other things that I do, that you talk about Donald Trump, you hashtag him, you put his name in an article, you put it on your website like edwarddentzel.com, you put his name as for your SEO, your search engine optimization that you can do on your website. You put his name in there, you're going to get more hits. If you don't, you're going to get less hits. And if I know it, all of these websites know it. And I really believe this is what has been driving media all of these months. Breitbart, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, all of it. All of them. They know that. And that they don't want to admit it like I have. I mean, I can come out right and say it. You know why I come out and say it? Because I don't do it anymore. Even if I'm talking about Donald Trump right now in this show, you're not going to see me hashtag this anywhere. I'm not going to put Donald Trump's name on my website for the show, this show, or any other show regarding Donald Trump. I need to talk about him because he's news, but I don't want to get any undue attention because of it. I'm not going to drive my internet popularity because of it. However, I will use Never Trump, the hashtag Never Trump, here and elsewhere, on Twitter and elsewhere. But most people I can see aren't doing that. And I think that that's what Breitbart.com has gotten caught up in, because you have to remember something. That in an election year, more people are looking for political information just because of the primaries that are going from state to state, the debates, all of these. Of course, there's less now, but when there were more nominees, all the different states they were in, all the different states they were representing, more people were paying attention. So more people out there looking for news, and you know what? It gets very competitive. In off-year elections, 2013 or something like that, the sites that are dedicated to politics, they don't have much competition. They don't. But in an election year like this year, they do, especially starting being that it started so early last year with the first GOP debate happening at the beginning of August. And since then, people have to worry about their clicks. They have to get the money while the money's good. And they're going to cover anything, they're going to do anything to get that coverage. It's just the way. This is like, sweepstakes month. If you don't know, in TV, they have a particular month where the advertising rates get set for the rest of the year. Sweeps is what they call it. And that's when you tend to get your best stories, your cliffhangers, and things like that. Now, as you know, I don't watch TV much anymore, but I believe that still goes on. And the more eyeballs you can get, the bigger advertising rates you can charge, even if other months in the year you're not getting as many eyeballs on your shows. Well, this is the chance for political websites to get people going to their sites. And they know that if they talk a lot about Donald Trump, they're going to get attention. And that's why it continues to go on. To the point where they found, you know what? We treat Donald Trump favorably. We'll even get more hits. Basically because most of the people who are supporting Donald Trump are new to politics. And frankly, some of them don't know what the heck they're talking about. Yes, I'm going to say it. That gets me off on a totally different tangent. It is so weird to me how touchy Donald Trump supporters are. How dare you say we don't know anything about politics? Well, that's what you get when you claim that we're all part of the establishment. That's what you get. That's what you get. I know that this past weekend, Ted Cruz was made fun of. He said that Donald Trump voters are low information voters. I believe a lot of them are. A lot of them are independents. A lot of them are Democrats. Some of them are conservatives who are, in my opinion, straying from who they say they are. But if for months they're going to call people like me who don't support Donald Trump as establishment insiders, you're for the GOP leadership, then I'm just going to fire back and say, yeah, you're a low information voter. There you go. But it's funny how touchy they are, because I could go for weeks without ever mentioning what people have called me on Twitter and elsewhere. I'm just not that touchy about it. But one little utterance about Donald Trump's voters being low information and the internet just blows up. I see it. It's you know what? They're a little bit like the guy they support, dare I say it. They sure are touchy. Sure are touchy. But Ben Shapiro, Michelle Fields, they've left. I don't know. I'm not saying this means the end of Breitbart.com. It does seem to me, in the his resignation statement, Ben Shapiro does blame it on the guy who is running things over there. His name is Steve Bannon, which Bannon, I think of that character from Seinfeld. That was the guy that wanted to be taken out to eat. I'm huge, Jerry. I'm huge. Remember that guy? That was Bannon. But this guy is Steve Bannon, and that's where most of the blame is being targeted by Ben Shapiro, that Steve Bannon is the one that is driving all of this Donald Trump stuff at the website. And it's in looking at those internal communications, a lot of the other reporters who are still there have wanted to come to Michelle Fields' defense, but they've been told not to. I wouldn't necessarily say that they've been threatened, but let's just say they've been told very passionately not to do so. Can we think of the last time that a reporter was sold out by his or her own organization? I think we'd have to go back quite a ways, unless it's just outright plagiarism, something like that. But it's fairly rare. But it seems now that they got into the swing of things over at Breitbart.com fairly quickly. Maybe there's some history there. I don't know Michelle Fields. Maybe she is a wacko. I have no idea. Don't know her. Probably will never know her. Probably never meet her. Really don't care. But you should come to the defense of an employee. Right? Especially with the video evidence. There was a audio recording of it. Oh, by the way, Ben Shapiro and Michelle Fields have not been the only two to leave. Their spokesman, Kurt Bardella, he left too, saying he could not in good conscience represent Breitbart.com anymore. He did an interview, and he just came right out and said, yeah, they're lying. He just says Breitbart.com, the powers that be, they're just ignoring, they're just liars. So I will admit that the last few months before I stopped going there, it was like a strange sight. It was like overnight that site got strange. It was like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. One day, person's all friendly. Next day, you see the same person. They have no personality whatsoever. It was kind of like that at Breitbart. It was just one day I woke up and said, this site has gotten weird. And that's why I've told you I don't go there anymore. I've been mainly going to redstate.com, hotair.com, National Review, the Ace of Spades blog, and a couple others. Ricochet.com, of course, to do my political reading. I do go to foxnews.com to get news. But as you know, I don't watch TV. And I haven't been listening to much of the radio recently either. Just trying to be as unbiased as possible. I don't want to know when any position that anybody else is taking for the most part, even though I do go to some opinion-related sites. So we'll see what happens, continues to happen. Personally, I think with Ben Shapiro leaving, he's the last person with a decent mind. He was the last person there with a decent mind. The last rational person there, as far as I could tell from all the reading that I did there. And like I said, even I think he's a little overrated. But I give him all the credit in the world for doing what he has done. And I'll be looking for him somewhere else to see if he wants to do any more, if he wants to do an interview to give the behind scenes of what he thinks was going on over there. Let's move on to something else. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and their future support for Donald Trump if Donald Trump happens to get the nomination. You may be wondering, you maybe want to ask me in person if you would ever meet me. What do you think? Ed, you're a fan of Ted Cruz. You're not necessarily a supporter. I'm not sending any money to him. I'm not going to a rally. I'm going to vote for him tomorrow here in Florida. I've already told you that. That is much the support he's going to get from me physically. Really. If he even gets the nomination, not going to go make calls, nothing like that. I'm going to say nice things about him, and if he does something wrong, I'm going to say bad things about him as well. That's what I do in this show. I'm not a honk. I'm not a fan. I'm not hero worship, which I think too many people on my side get into. My allegiance first is conservatism. Everything else comes like 50th. Regarding his statement saying he would support the nominee, I know why he has to say that. I know why he has to. That's not what I would do, but it's easy for me to talk. I'm not running. I'm not asking for anybody's votes. I'm not asking for money. I'm not a senator from Texas. I know what I think I know what he's thinking inside, but this is a very political thing to say. Because he can't come out and say, I know he looks like a hypocrite saying, after all this, Donald Trump struggles with the truth. Donald is lying to you about this, and then after all that saying, I'm going to support the nominee, whoever it is, it kind of does make him look like a hypocrite. That's why I just don't believe it. I don't know what Ted Cruz is going to do come November if Donald Trump is the nominee. But I think he's thinking, you know what, if I say that I'm not going to support him, then they're going to start thinking that I'm going to go off on third-party type of run, which I don't think is going to be the case. For me, regarding Ted Cruz, what he should do if Donald Trump gets the nomination, I wouldn't appear with him. I wouldn't say a word about him either way. I wouldn't raise any money for him. I certainly wouldn't take a vice presidential slot with him. There's that talk out there. Well, this passes for intelligent opinion this weekend. I saw a few different places. Well, Trump and Cruz are going to get together. I tell you what, and I tweeted this out this weekend. If Cruz would accept a vice presidential slot with Donald Trump is still not getting my vote. He's still not getting it. And likewise, if Ted Cruz were to ask Donald Trump to be his running mate, guess what? Ted Cruz isn't getting my vote either. I don't want to have any, I've told you, I don't want my fingerprints on any of this. The Republican Party and all of these people I've given them a lot of space. I've given them a lot of room. But going there, doing that, would use up all of the goodwill that I've given them. It's too much. It's too much. It's the same way I feel about the NFL and my Steelers with what's gone on with that, the way the league is now officiating and the cheating and all of that. They've used up my goodwill. I gave them a break for a long time. And then once my Pittsburgh Steelers got Michael Vick, I said, it's too much. I got to back away. I got to prove to myself that I'm not addicted to this. All right? That's the way it would be if Ted Cruz were to pick Donald Trump as his running mate. I would say, you know what? He's just used up everything that every nice thing that I've said about him. It's too much. Can't go there with him. In the end, Ted Cruz, just a guy. Marco Rubio, just a guy. And that's why I've tried to tell all of you Donald Trump people, he's just a guy. Just like Jim Jones taking all those people down into the jungles of South America. Just a guy. Just a guy. So I'm not going to give Ted Cruz too much crap for this. But I will have to judge it when it happens. This is still a hypothetical situation. But so help me, if he's out there campaigning for Donald Trump and raising money for him and everything else, I'm done. I'm just done. But I understand why he has to say it right now. I understand it. It's just a little bit of politics going on right there. Now, Marco Rubio, he's been a little bit different about it, but let's put it this way. I think there's a lot of bitterness rising up in Marco Rubio right now. If you don't know, the polls going on here in Florida there's been one favorable one and about 3 or 4 unfavorable ones. And even one, Cruz is actually beating him, and Marco Rubio, if you can believe it, is actually in 3rd place here. So there could be that going on as well. He's kind of wavering on whether he would support the nominee and all of that. You would think that Marco Rubio would be more likely to support the nominee, the Republican nominee, whoever it is, more than Ted Cruz would be, but that's not the way it seems right now, and I just think that it's a factor of being right in the middle of the process, whereas Ted Cruz is thinking, hey, I'm still in this, whereas Marco Rubio is saying, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm still in this or not. But I wouldn't give Ted Cruz too hard of a time about what he said. For you Cruz supporters, is he really going to do that? Is he really going to support the nominee? It doesn't mean anything right now. It doesn't mean anything. It's just an interview. It's just talk. Let's see what happens if that happens. And then you can make a value judgment and a character judgment regarding Ted Cruz. That's what I'm going to do. In the meantime, I think Ted Cruz is the best choice. I'm going to vote for him tomorrow here in Florida. I think he's still the best choice. I think he's the most conservative guy. He's not perfect. I think that he can beat Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever else. I, like you, have some wariness about his delivery and the way he comes across sometimes. But he is easily the best choice of the Republicans who are left. Easily. But once again, not sending any money to him, not going to one of his events. Let's move on to something else before I have to go to the break. Regarding tomorrow, I might as well just crank this out before I go to the break. The polls and what I think or what's actually going to happen in all these different states. And I just have a few of the states written down here. Florida, Ohio, and Illinois. Here in my home state of Florida, I've told you, I don't think that Marco Rubio has a prayer winning here. I don't. He may surprise. Maybe it'll be like Minnesota, where I think kind of came out of nowhere and won that. I just don't see it. There's just not been enough polls with him ahead. In fact, I don't know if there's been one poll with him ahead at all. Maybe it could be like Cruz in Iowa. I guess that's possible. You could also say that had Cruz backed off and given support to Rubio in the state, that Rubio will have a better chance. I agree with that. The problem is, as I stated last week, with Florida you have early voting. So what about all those people who went and voted early? I did not. But all those people who voted early and voted for Ted Cruz. And then all of a sudden he says, you know what, all you people are going to vote for me. We need to stop Donald Trump, so why don't you vote for my friend Marco instead? Well, what's that do to all those people who are for early voting? Now you see one more reason that we as conservatives were against this stuff. And it's likewise the same with Marco Rubio. A lot of Ted Cruz people. Why didn't he drop out? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Well, once the early voting starts, it's too late. You can't get those votes back. It's not like all those people who voted for Marco Rubio can go back to the polling place and say, hey, I want to change my vote. It's not how it works. So pretty much the way, as soon as the early voting started, it was over. It was over. Anybody who was in the race was going to stay here. And that's just the way it was going to be. I think Donald Trump is going to win Florida. He's going to get all of the delegates. It sucks way it goes. The only good news regarding tomorrow is that he's going to have a trouble winning in Ohio. I think John Kasich, of all people, may win that state. Seems very even to me there. We'll see if Ted Cruz can do any damage there, kind of try to pull something out. And probably the best thing we can hope for is Donald Trump not winning there and John Kasich getting those votes. That's maybe as good as it's going to get there. Whereas in Illinois, it seems that Ted Cruz has a shot at winning. Some of the polls, he's within single digits of Donald Trump. And we know that Donald Trump does overpoll, meaning his election numbers are usually lower than his poll numbers. And it seems that Ted Cruz's numbers seem to be higher than his poll. He usually gets more of the vote than says in the polls, if you can go by the polls, which have been hugely inaccurate this election season. Then maybe Ted Cruz can pull out something in Illinois and make this all so you'd have Trump win in Florida, Kasich win in Ohio, Cruz win in Illinois. That may be as good as it gets tomorrow. And unfortunately mean that Kasich would stay around. On the other hand, I think Marco Rubio would finally be done. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Talk radio the way the founding fathers would have done it.
I'm just a man trying to make his mark on history.
Red State Talk Radio.
Accuracy and range are a necessity. Now comfort is an option as well. Nemo Arms introduces the Omen 300 Win Mag. The Omen 300 is perfectly balanced for reduced recoil, creating sub-minute of angle accuracy. And fit for the tightest of tolerances. The Omen is offered in carbine or full-length models with a 10 or 14-round magazine. American-made, owned, and designed. Nemo Arms is setting a new standard in modern sporting rifles. Find out more at nemoarms.com.
Less than 2% of America's population volunteers to defend our nation. Though we rarely see them, we live the benefits of these heroes' sacrifices in the freedom we know and the safety we feel. Each and every day, the Gary Sinise Foundation serves our nation by honoring our defenders, veterans, first responders, and their families. We do this by creating and supporting unique programs designed to entertain, educate, inspire, strengthen, and build communities. The Gary Sinise Foundation has grown because the need has never been greater. Together, we'll improve the lives of thousands of American heroes and their families day in, day out, all year long. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, our veterans, our first responders, and the families who stand by them, we can always do a little more. Join us. Visit GarySiniseFoundation.org.
Hi, I'm Gil Fulbright. The people who run my campaign, they've made this commercial, and I'm in it. This campaign, it's not about me. It's about crafting a version of me that'll appeal to you. A version that visits random work sites with paid actors pointing at things. A version of me that doesn't find old people loathsome or pointless. Has a conventionally attractive yet curiously still family. Listening to my constituents, legislating, these are things I don't do. What I do is spend about 70% of my time raising funds for re-election. I'd do anything to stay in office. My name's Gil Fulbright, but hell, I'll change my name to Phil Goldbright, or Bill Fulbright, or fill up my mouth with farts. These are the things that are important to me. And these are the fine people that finance my campaign. Now, in order to do these things, I have to stay in office. And to stay in office, I have to keep these guys happy. Now, if any of these things make these guys unhappy, well, my hands are tied. So come November, the choice is clear. You want another spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? Or a spineless mouthpiece for special interest and lobbyists? I'm Philip a Mouth with Farts, and I approve this message.
We're back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio to continue on this little section on what's going to happen tomorrow. I did read something interesting, and I did not write down the website. I think it's at thedailycaller.com, which is another website I go to once in a while. There's an article there stating that maybe I didn't understand it. I will have to admit that I don't understand all the inner workings of what goes on at the convention and all that, because it's just not my cup of tea. But there's now the news that these delegates, that these different candidates are racking up from primary to caucus, from caucus to primary. These delegates are not beholden to those states and to what the voters in those states, how they decided, if you can believe it. In fact, as I was reading this article, I discovered that there's only one time, and the first time, I'm going to guess the only time in the history of the Republican Party, where the delegates at the convention had to vote the way the people in their respective states voted. And funny enough, it was in 1976 with Gerald Ford and, of course, Ronald Reagan, taking him the whole way to the convention. Gerald Ford was afraid that some of these delegates might switch over to Ronald Reagan, so they passed something for that particular year that said that the delegates couldn't switch. Excuse me, the delegates couldn't switch. But that's the only time it's ever happened, and they went back to the old system in 1980, and since then. Now, it hasn't been a big issue because in all of those years, the nominee won the nomination fairly easily. In 2012, 2008, 2000, 1996, it's not really been much of a contest, unlike, say, 2008 on the Democrat side between Hillary and Barack Obama. Well, now we have a situation this year where it's going to be close, a lot closer than any of those years, and this is probably going to be the closest year since 1976. And here's what I know. None of those Republican leaders are going to alter the rules for Donald Trump. Now, they did it in 1976 for Gerald Ford. Why? Because he was a president. That's why they did it. I don't know if Gerald Ford was just a regular nominee in 76, whether he would have had the pull to get that done. But as president, I guess you could do that. Donald Trump doesn't have that. And he can bellyache and do everything that he wants. But the parties, that's what the rules are. I thought, the way I understood it, that these delegates had to vote the way their states voted the first time around. And then on the second, if they don't get 1237, it's on the second round that the delegates can start going off in the different directions. That's not the case. So that even adds another, little quirk to this system, what we're going through here. And I would say that it even more lessens the likelihood that Donald Trump gets the nomination the good old-fashioned way. At least that's the way I see it. And maybe that's good, because I've told you that I think that as these months go on, there's people that are going to just wear out on him. I think he wears on people. I think. I really believe that. And dare I say it, that if you think that Barack Obama got bored with being president, kind of somewhere into his second term, and I've said that for a while, he just looks like a guy who wishes he was out of there. I think I said that back when he did that show with Jerry Seinfeld, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I said that then. He just looks like a guy who wishes he was anywhere else. And he's only in there now to bother conservatives as much as possible. If you think that Barack Obama got bored with being president, you just wait till Donald Trump gets to be president. And once again, that's what makes him so dangerous. He's not going to be bored in a way that he's going to just gum up the works and make sure no laws get passed, which would be perfectly, I want to know, that'd be perfectly fine with me. He's probably going to do things to keep himself interested in the job. Well, you know what keeps Donald Trump interested? Controversy. Drama. He'll look for drama just for drama's sake alone. I mean, he was the runner of a reality show. What do you expect? Right? And his character would be that way. That once he'd start feeling a little bored with the job and knowing he had a couple more years to go, he might just start creating problems out of nothing. Wants to sue this person over there. Wants to provoke the Chinese over nothing over here, over trade and tariffs. Just for the heck of it. So, I think that, once again, I just wonder if we're going to get to August or whenever the convention is, and all of his supporters are still going to be as energetic as they are now. Maybe the hardcore ones are, but some of the stragglers on the fringes, and we know those people exist, they may start to feel otherwise. And if those delegates who right now are part of state like New Hampshire or South Carolina, where Donald Trump has won, if they start getting if their spines start to loosen a little bit and they start to have second thoughts and doubts and their conscience gets to them, who knows what can happen. Let's move on to something else. A Maryland police officer was targeted this weekend, shot and killed a black police officer. I think he was 29 years old. And they caught the suspect. We're going to find out eventually what the motivation was. Maybe a Black Lives Matter guy, maybe a terrorist, maybe somebody, a guy who was trying to commit like suicide by cop. If you don't know what that is, there's people out there who don't have the courage to commit suicide themselves, or in some demented way, they're religious, but they want to commit suicide, and they're afraid if they commit suicide, they won't get to go to heaven. So they figure, well, you know what? If I could get somebody to murder me, to shoot me and kill me, that would get me, that's kind of an out. A way to get around the rules, I guess you could say, of religion, if that's even what they're thinking. And so they commit suicide by cop. They go and find a cop. They start waving a gun around. They don't want to put the gun down, and the cops end up shooting him. Suicide by cop. It's more common than you'd think. But this doesn't sound like that. I don't think it was. Maybe it was. Maybe this guy thought, hey, I go shoot this cop. The other cops are going to come out. They're going to shoot me, and I'll be dead. Well, that wasn't exactly what happened. But you should know something. I saw the statistic in that story. This Maryland police officer is the 20th to die in the line of duty this year. So in 2.5 months, roughly, 20 cops in the United States have died in the line of duty. To give you a comparison, in the year 2013, 3 years ago, 27 cops died over the course of the entire year. 27 over the course of the entire year. Now, granted, that was an anomaly, but that just shows you what can be done in the United States if people mind themselves and respect law enforcement. But there's no doubt in my mind that the reason that the rates are elevated this year and they were elevated last year is because of Black Lives Matter and all these other groups who have made it a point to say it's open season on cops. You can see it right there in the statistics. And as you know, I'm not even the biggest police fan. I've told you that. The guys that I've known in my life, have I known any women that went into law enforcement? Personally known any women that went into law enforcement? Not off the top of my head. But the men that I know that went into law enforcement, I went to high school with or got to know one way or the other, can't say that I've been that impressed. Maybe they cleaned their lives up. I don't know, but it just seemed like a strange choice given how I thought they lived their lives. These are not the types of guys who you would want, I think, overseeing a community. Let's put it that way. So that's the way I generally look at the police, even though I know we need them. I know they do a lot of work that people don't want to do. It's somewhat of a thankless job, and now on top of everything else, they're being targeted. So it kind of sucks to be a cop these days. But these cops do not deserve what they're getting. I know there's some dirty cops out there, and I talked about that one last year who staged his own suicide, trying to make it look like some criminal shot him. Where was that? I forget what city of the state that was in. But And then they found out that his family was involved in some underhanded stuff too. This was not that. This shooting in Maryland was not that. But this is going to continue. And there are people out there, there are groups out there that saw this story and liked it more than would probably like to admit. There's probably a decent part of the percentage of the population in the United States that saw this story and liked it. And see, this is the exact reason, getting back to Donald Trump, that his behavior and his attitude toward violence distresses me so much. All he is doing is making those types of people angrier. All right? See, I told this, did I say this on Friday? I know that I said this, typed this to this, this political friend of mine. That the reason that all of these types of people who probably would shoot cops are showing up at these Donald Trump rallies to disrupt them is because they see Donald Trump as being like they are. I'm not saying they necessarily have the same ideas about government. I mean, in Donald Trump's case, who knows what he thinks about government? He's flipping all the time. But one thing he is consistent on is violence. All right? Punching the protesters, wanting to pay his supporters' bills if they punch a protester, getting in their faces, as if that's the way to fix all of this, and it's not. This only riles those people up more. And we know that's not the way to beat these Black Lives Matter people. All you have to do is enforce the law and get the truth out there. That's all you need. Beating them up stops nothing. Stops nothing. But they're looking for fights. They're looking for violence. They see what Donald Trump is saying. They look at a lot of his supporters and they say, oh yeah, these people are ready to rumble and so are we. And that, in the end, that only hurts us. That only hurts the Republican Party. That only hurts white people in this country. Just to be frank. That's all it hurts. It's not going to hurt them because really they don't care. They want chaos. They want cars overturned in the streets. They want storefronts burned out. They want cops dead. And they're looking for any reason to do it. I mean, there's a reason that they're not showing up at Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio events. There's a reason. What's the reason? Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, John Kasich don't incite violence. They don't talk about assaulting people. They don't talk about punching people. Even though, for example, in Ted Cruz's case, politically and government policy-wise, what he would do would hurt these people much more than anything Donald Trump could do. Being that Ted Cruz has a negative attitude toward big government. That would hurt these Black Lives Matter people and all these Occupy Wall Street people, all those people like that. That would hurt them way more than Donald Trump ever would do. But these people are more about violence than anything else. All right? Do you understand that? It's like Donald Trump and those people speak the same language. Even though otherwise they have nothing in common. But they speak the same language. They know how to communicate with each other. You know what I thought about this when I was thinking of the first Avengers movie with the Chitauri. Remember they come out of that hole above New York City? And there's a part in that movie where Thor says something to the effect it had with one of those stones, and it says, you doing that is saying that you are ready for a higher form of war. Remember that it was one of the conversations, meetings they had on that helicarrier. You doing this has alerted them, and now they want to fight you. by you messing around with things you don't understand. This is what's going on with Trump and all of these groups that are disrupting his events. He is speaking their language. He has let them know he is ready for a higher form of war, and it's not a political war. It's not in the realm of ideas. It is in the realm of guns and knives and punching and riots and violence, everything like that. That's what it is. You know, there was an article out there this weekend I saw. You know, hey, all you conservatives, you know those people disrupting those Trump events. You know they hate you too. Yeah, I know. But there's a reason they don't show up. I know that on some college campuses they do because those places are populated with those idiots. But out here in the real world, how much disruption goes on when a true conservative gets up to speak? Not too much. You know why? Because we don't cite the violence. We don't do it. We speak out against it. We think people should vote a different way. We think there should be laws against it, not against necessarily free speech, but if you come and disrupt the event and you start throwing punches and everything, you should go to jail. And that's, in the world of ideas, that is the only way you're going to beat these people. That's what you have to remember. You know, so if you're, whoever wrote that, and I didn't know who wrote that, I forget who wrote the article, saying that we conservatives, we should come to the defense of Donald Trump because those people hate us too. There's a difference. First of all, I have nothing in common with Donald Trump. I keep saying that over and over and over. I don't. And neither do any of you, even though you think you do. First of all. Second of all, they aren't going after him because of policy. So it doesn't matter if I'm conservative or not. It's not about politics. It's about violence. And there is a difference. And I'm not going, they may oppose me. And I know that those rioters don't think like I do. But we just handle it a different way. We just do. As much as, once again, some of these Trump supporters want to bring up what Ronald Reagan did with those protesters in California and some other instances, never incited violence. Never ordered anybody to punch anybody. Never did. Never did. Brought in the National Guard. Because these people wouldn't get out. They weren't following the law. So you follow the law. You don't tell people to assault anybody. He didn't say National Guard come in and shoot all these people. So I'm not going to get baited into that conversation. I should be on Trump's side because of this. He's getting what he asked for. He's getting what he asked for. You want violence. You want your protesters to get punched and all of that. You're just going to bring on more protesters because that's what they want. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, he's never going to get hit with a punch. He's never going to throw a punch. They're not going to get anywhere close to him. He's going to expect all of his underlings, the people who show up at these events, to do his bidding. They're the ones that will go to jail, like that old guy's going to do. They're the ones that are going to get all the bruises. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's going to get on his private plane and go to the next event. And that's something that Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich wouldn't have anything to do with. He don't want anything to do with any of it. And how Trump supporters don't see that, I don't know how they don't see it. But I've come to the end of the show. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at SoundCloud, Podbean, Podomatic, YouTube. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book, where you can find the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you for listening tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.